My name is Gül Erdemli. I'm from Regulatory Affairs Early Development at Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation. At Radar AD, I'm the co-lead of Work Package 3. This work package covers the communications with regulatory authorities, patient associations, payers, and ethical boards. We lead the interactions with regulatory authorities, health technology assessment bodies, and payers to obtain feedback on challenges associated with the use of technology-enabled functional endpoints in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Drug development in Alzheimer's disease has been challenging. This is at least partly due to clinical endpoints that are not optimal. Established functional tests often have limited sensitivity, particularly to the changes observed in early stages of the disease. There is clearly an urgent need to identify and validate better efficacy endpoint measures, which can detect subtle differences in function in real time. Remote measurement technologies such as wearables, apps, and home-based sensors can provide a broader and more objective picture of how patients feel or function in their daily lives in real-world settings compared with intermittent clinical visit assessments. And as such, they could complement standard outcome assessments that mainly represents patients' or caregivers' perception of their activities of daily living. Additionally, remote data collection has the potential to reduce the burden on patients and caregivers traveling to the study site, especially for patients with cognitive limitations, and increase opportunities for them to participate in clinical investigations. This is expected to result in the inclusion of more diverse populations in clinical studies and better generalizability of the results while potentially reducing overall study costs. Therefore, novel digital technologies could offer improved assessment of function, leading to more successful and informative clinical studies. But at this time, widely accepted tools are not yet available. Regulatory endorsement of remote measurement technology-based assessment is essential for their utilization in clinical trials. And one of the objectives of Radar AD Consortium is to discuss results obtained from the Radar AD study with regulatory agencies to obtain guidance about how to develop a path for formal qualification of remote monitoring-based assessments as outcome measurements in future therapeutic interventions. The Radar AD Consortium started health authority engagement in 2020 during a European Medicines Agency Innovation Task Force meeting on February 4, 2020. This was an informal discussion to obtain feedback on the program. The feedback obtained from this discussion was incorporated in project activities. As the project progressed and the results from the interim analysis of the Radar AD clinical study became available, the consortium decided to request a qualification advice meeting from European Medicines Agency. On that note, I would like to turn it over to my colleague Susan Foy to talk about the interactions with European Medicines Agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Gul. So the Radar AD Consortium is currently performing an observational feasibility study. This study will compare digital information from selected remote monitoring technologies with established clinical measures in participants with preclinical Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, and mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. A healthy volunteer group matched for age and gender is included also as a control. In December of 2022, we submitted a briefing book to the EMA, which outlined available data from the interim analysis of the Radar AD clinical study. A preparatory meeting was held on February 28, 2023, and the purpose of this meeting was to obtain advice on the proposed qualification program for the development of remote monitoring technology-based outcome assessments to ultimately include in regulatory submissions in order to support the drug development for Alzheimer's disease. This consortium proposed that once qualified, remote monitoring technology-based assessments would be deployed in clinical studies to demonstrate whether the new drugs result in a slower progression of functional impairment compared with active comparators or placebo. Proposed discussion topics with EMA includes identification of functional domains that are meaningful to patients, selection of suitable remote monitoring technologies, and clinical evaluation of these assessments. Data quality and user experience are also discussed. The team also provided a draft protocol proposal for a follow-up longitudinal study to assess the sensitivity of remote monitoring technology-based assessments to change over time. The pre-submission meeting was very well attended by EMA, including senior members of the Scientific Advice Working Party, and reviewers were extremely engaged, supportive, and provided valuable feedback to us on our briefing book. The team subsequently updated the briefing book based on the feedback, and the final briefing book was submitted on March 31st. And the Committee of Human Medicinal Products meeting was held in June. RADAR-AD has been an excellent collaboration across multiple organisations. Some of the best European academic centres and leading pharmaceutical companies are participating in the project, and we have excellent synergies among academic and pharmaceutical industry partners. This provides invaluable learning experiences for all parties involved. The potential of remote monitoring technologies is very exciting. These technologies allow us to measure the functional decline in a real-world environment, for example, in a patient's home, rather than in a doctor's office, and therefore are likely to provide more accurate and sensitive assessment of functional decline seen in Alzheimer's disease. It is anticipated that remote monitoring technologies provide much-needed, objective, sensitive, and accurate measurements of function in Alzheimer's disease patients. The results of RADAR-AD study will therefore facilitate drug development by establishing a roadmap for implementation of novel digital measures in future clinical trials, as well as research in disease progression and pathophysiology. Improved measures and monitoring of function will also help better care of patients by earlier interventions. We feel privileged to be part of this program and project and would like to thank all those involved.
My name is Vera Nies. I work as a program manager at Ligature. We manage large public-private partnerships, such as, for example, RADAR-AD. In RADAR-AD, I've been involved with the general program management, so making sure the reports are being sent to the funder, for example. And over time, I've become more involved with work that relates to regulatory, patient engagement, and ethics. Regulatory bodies are organizations or agencies that make sure that research that is being conducted with humans or applications for drug market authorizations abide to all the rules that are important for these activities. So, for example, important ones are medical ethical committees. So if you would like to conduct research that involves humans, you have to go through review and approval by these medical ethical committees. They will review your clinical trial application and then say whether or not it fits with all the rules that are in place. And of course, this is important because we want to make sure that if people participate in research, that the research setup is sound, that what is being investigated is really investigated, that they do not suffer unnecessary burdens from participating in such a research activity, but also that what is being developed is actually safe and that it's effective. A bit later on in the process, another player that's very important is the European Medicines Agency, the EMA. And what they do is that they give advice on more in the context of medicines development. So if you would like to develop a certain medicinal product, they are the ones that review all the data that you have collected and then say whether or not you can bring that medicinal product on the market. Now, what the EMA also does is that it gives advice on which results they accept. We call that endpoints. So they say if this is something that you show in your trial and this is the readout that you're using, we as an agency would accept that as a readout for the effectivity and the safety that you're investigating. It's very important to engage with these regulators early on because you want to take them along in what you're doing, and you want to take them along in what you are developing. And at the same time, you want to get feedback on what you're doing, because there might be things that you're not aware of, that you haven't thought about. It is possible that new rules and regulations are being put in place. And yeah, you want to make sure that what you are developing is something that they accept as an end result. And I always think about this, I compare it to organizing a holiday for my friends, for example. I can of course organize a whole holiday from start to end, but if I don't ask my friends if they like the end result, it is possible that they don't like the end result. And with these regulators, it's a bit of the same. So you ask them what they're interested in, you show them your plans, and then they can say, okay, from our point of perspective, this is something that we would support, but this is something that's still not strong enough. So you need to tweak it here and there a little bit. And that's why it's important to start these discussions early on, so that you don't waste time, money, people's time to develop something that that the regulators will not accept towards the end. To get approval for the clinical trial, we worked a lot with these medical ethical committees, so it's not as much advice, but it's really a checkpoint that you need to pass in order to be able to execute your research, so that's one. And then another very important one was getting qualification advice from the EMA. This is a very specific procedure that is specifically set up to get early advice on either the drug that you are developing, or the tool that you are developing, or the endpoint that you're interested in. So that's something that we did in RADAR AD, and this was needed because what we are developing, what we call novel digital endpoints, for example, what we are developing, it is really novel, and there's a lot of buzz around this, like the power of these digital tools, the power of what these digital tools can do. But of course we want to test that with the people that in the end have to accept the results that we are collecting and generating. And this qualification advice procedure is specifically for this, so you can go to the regulators, to the EMA, bring them all the advice and all the questions that you have, explain what you did and why you did it, and they will evaluate it with an open mind and give you very sound feedback on where you stand in the process and where you can still improve things. And that's exactly what we needed as a group. So this is something that we're doing as a group. So there's different pharmaceutical companies involved, there's academic partners involved, there's a patient organization involved in the work that we have been doing. And our common goal is really to develop something that's of use to patients. So we really want to make the lives of patients better. So what we're doing is developing something that's of use to everyone. It's a common interest, I would say. But we do want to make sure that what we are developing is useful. And that's why we need to start these conversations with the regulators to hear, because we can all together think that what we're doing is amazing, but in the end, if the regulator doesn't accept it, if we cannot use it to support patients, or if we cannot use it in clinical drug trials, then the efforts are, well, I wouldn't say wasted, but it wouldn't lead to the end result that we are aiming for. So in the project there's different types of partners. RADAR AD is a consortium, so it means different parties with different interests are working together. There are, for example, a couple of pharmaceutical companies, we have a few academic organizations, but also a patient engagement organization or a patient organization. And they all have different interests and are interested in different outcomes of the work. I think the common denominator is that we want to do something good for people that are living with Alzheimer's disease. So that's a big one. For the pharmaceutical companies, the interest is mainly, I think, in further developing these novel endpoints based on digital tools. So what they will most likely do is take these results, further develop them, maybe set up a larger study or a different study, and then get qualification opinion so that they can use these end results really in their clinical trials and perhaps better stratify patients, for example, or start treatments earlier on. Those are all possibilities, and that's really where the main interest for these pharmaceutical companies sits. Now, for the academic partners, you can imagine we had a huge study. We collected lots of data, so there's a lot of interest for them to further mine these data and see if they can find novel things that could be starting points for new treatments, could be starting points for new tools that can support people that are living with this condition. They can publish papers and they can build on the foundation that we laid out. So that's interesting for the academic partners. And then I think for Alzheimer Europe, the patient organization on our consortium, they also generated a lot of experience and a lot of data. I think for them it's mainly on how we can work together to bring something to people living with AD. And of course they already have a lot of experience with this, and this is something that they can add to that body of knowledge and build on that as well.